Hello, everyone. This is our third Thursday. Wow, that maybe makes that confusing. It is the third Thursday of October. It's our inaugural third Thursday event. I'm Brenda Florida, certified life coach, and whether you end up coming into this live or watch the recording, I'm just glad you're here because I know how hard it is to show up at a certain place at a certain time. And so that's why I wanted to start this new format as a free offering to everyone in my audience and anybody you invite to get familiar with my work and to get some tools to help you in your journey in your life towards authenticity, freedom, all the things that are the most important to all of us. And so each month on the third Thursday, I'm going to offer this kind of a master class. And each time, just like today, I will record it. And I'm going to have people register every month. And so that way I can send the recording out afterwards. And if you can't make it live, no big deal. You just watch the recording. So thank you for being here. Thanks for being part of this one. I picked anxiety for the first topic because it was the most popular in the little poll that I did. So I'm going to use a presentation here just so I stay on track with what I want to share with you guys today. And for those of you who don't know me, I'll tell you a little bit more about myself too. So, first of all, I have many things open here, don't I? There we go. Let's do that. Okay. So 3 anxiety busters today. That is our goal, is to give you 3. If you've followed me before, you know that I am all about big concepts and lofty ideals and wonderful things, and I'm very pragmatic. So I don't want to just talk about anxiety and whatever. I want to give you ways that you can actually help yourself get some relief. So that's what we're going to talk about today. All right, there we go. I like that better. All right, who I am and what I do. I liberate people to their authentic power and unique self-expression. So authenticity and personal power are always hand in hand. We can't really have our own power without being authentic, at least in that present moment. So some of us are probably good at feeling empowered in certain areas of our lives and not in others. And part of that is because when you're feeling empowered, you're being authentic, you're claiming your skills or your, the things or the things, whatever, what you're good at, all those kinds of things. In some way, you're claiming that, or you wouldn't have the power to stand in your truth on it. And so that's really all. When we're authentic, we have our power. And when we have power, we are authentic. And so when we have those 2 things, then expressing ourselves in our own unique, perfect way, not that we are perfect, but, in the way that is the highest expression of ourselves, is one way that I often say it, then that's just ends up being a natural outcome of living out of that authentic power. And again, it's not an all or none thing, and all of it's a journey. I mean, I'm not 100%, always in my power, always speaking my truth, always being authentic. I can get pulled off course too, but it's all about, and this is where I get practical again, how quickly can I become aware of that and course correct and get back in to my authentic power and self-expression. And so, of course, anxiety takes us off of that. So let me tell you what I mean by that, because when we are our authentic selves, it does not mean difficult things, challenging things, traumatic things even don't happen to us, okay? But what happens, what I've experienced, especially over the last few years, I mean, I've always thought I've had a little bit of an up and down, exciting life anyway, my fair share of crises with divorces and, being sexually abused when I was a kid and different things, lots of moving, job, successes and failures and da-da-da. So I always thought I sort of had an interesting life anyway, but the last few years it got even more interesting. But what I learned, especially in the last few years, is this difference between doing things that are, really difficult is the word I'll use, and doing it with a lot of stress or a lot of anxiety. So we can all do, is it Gwendolyn Doyle? Somebody has a podcast, we can all do hard things, something like that. And we can all do hard things without having tons of stress and anxiety. And what I mean by that is the kind of stress and anxiety that doesn't, you don't get any relief from. We're all made. So anxiety, it is just a natural part of our human existence. Okay. Everybody has some anxiety. The problem is not anxiety. Anxiety to me is part of our natural warning system, sort of like the way good fear is. It keeps us from running out in the middle of the street, or if we were in the savannah and being chased by a lion, we would go hide, or we would play dead, or whatever, or run like the wind. And so anxiety is kind of just a amped up, to me, stress level. Okay. And so we're all made, sometimes it's there to warn us about something we need to not be doing, or do something we do need to do and we're not doing it. So I think it starts off as like this healthy thing of warning, like a lot of stress can be like, wait a minute, you need to look at something or this wouldn't be so stressful. Okay, I wouldn't have the anxiety if I didn't need to look at it. So that's fine. And short-term anxiety isn't really a problem if you think about it. When we talk about, wow, for a second, I just thought that said, why are we so obnoxious? It doesn't say that. Why are we so anxious? All right. Thank goodness there were no typos there. Anyway, it is when we can't recover from it quickly that it becomes a problem. Somebody said to me the other day, and I love this metaphor because I think we all can relate to it. It's like suddenly it's like we have this heavy blanket on us and we just can't get it off. That's the kind of anxiety I'm talking to you about today, and how to respond to that so that it can lessen, so that we can experience some relief, because that's what we want. Think of anxiety always in a spectrum. And so, there's, if we want to call it 0 to 10, and then, also short term, it lasts for a few minutes. Long term, it's lasting for an hour, it's lasting for several hours, it's lasting all day. I can't shake it for days. There's a spectrum of how long it lasts too, as far as, and also as how much intensity it has. So what we're going for is relief. And relief may not take you from a level 8 anxiety to a 0 or a 1, but if it takes you to a 7, then you can go from the 7 and do something that will get you to a 6 or a 5, right? So a lot of times we have this really unrealistic expectation of what we can do. And that's why I'm saying this episode, which lasted about 3 years, that just ended this, midway or first quarter, we'll say, by about March of 2021, things were getting a lot easier for me. But it really went on for about 3 years. I had just extended stress in multiple areas of my life, financially, professionally. I didn't have a home. I had given up my home. So it was a lot of stress in a lot of different areas for an extended time. So it wasn't just one thing, and it didn't last a month or a week or, even a few months. It was 3 freaking years. And so, of course, even though I'm not prone to anxiety, I am prone to, being very positive and seeing the best in things and all of that. But that was such a deep, impactful, stressful time, and it lasted for so long. I started having a lot of anxiety. And so I began to learn the very things I'm going to teach you today, and realizing how important it is for myself to not to think, oh my gosh, my mind is spinning 100 miles an hour in anxiety. I'm not going to be able to get from this to joy. Okay, which is the way I would normally set myself up for, because I'm a very I tend to be black and white and all or none, thinking. That's sort of my instinct. And so when we're in anxiety, when we're in stress, we tend to go back to those instincts. So I would be like, even if I had some relief from my anxiety, I'm totally not acknowledging it because I'm not enjoying it. And then I'm adding to the anxiety by criticizing myself. What's wrong with me? I mean, my God, I'm a coach. I should be able to do this and da da da. And we all have our way of doing that. So I just wanted to set you up at the beginning before we go into our 3 tools that I want to give you. That one, I'm talking to you about something I know. I'm not just sitting in my $1 million home that I've always lived in, with my Louboutin shoes and, whatever else you want to think of, my Chanel bag, talking about how to relieve anxiety. So I've been there. I've lived in a lot of anxiety over the last 3 years. And I've also been in that place where I'm doing things that are very difficult, and I'm not having anxiety and I'm not having stress. And so I've kind of learned the difference and how what are the qualities of that? What am I doing differently when I'm going through something very, very difficult that is not really, I'm using the word not stressful. Again, it's hard, but it doesn't have those qualities of, keeping me up at night and the anxiety and all of that. And then when I am in that place of anxiety, what is it trying to show me? Is it warning me about something? Is it trying to make me see something I'm not seeing? And not having this unrealistic expectation that I'm going to go from super anxious to super happy all in one fell swoop, that if I can just step myself down. I remember one night I was, oh my gosh, it was the middle of the night. I couldn't sleep. My mind was going 100 miles an hour about whatever. I remember where I was house sitting for somebody, but I don't remember the exact problems, but I'm sure it was financial and business and where am I going to live when they come home and whatever. So big problems. And my mind was just going 1,000,000 miles an hour. And I picked up an exercise from Abraham Hicks. Maybe it was something I had read that they suggested or something. And they were talking about this concept of emotionally just try to go to the next best emotion. And so they had it was a book, because I can remember now, pulling out the book, they had a list of like 22 emotions or something. And so wherever I was, very far down on the list, I was like, okay, if I can just get to the next one, can I go from anxious to afraid? Like that could be a step up, to just be able to lose the anxiety, but still be afraid of something, fearful about something, or just be angry about something, be disappointed about something. Can I just go there, instead of trying to get my way all the way to happy? And so that is a really powerful thing. So look at yourself through that lens, and just sort of have that self-awareness of what's my tendency. Do I want to just get a complete escape and somehow go from anxious to happy? And can I reframe that for myself and allow myself to consider it a victory, just to go from anxiety to anger or disappointment? And the reason why I say that is because one of the qualities, at least to me, I feel about anxiety, and I'm not a therapist, I'm a life coach, I am certified, I've been trained in a lot of cool tools, I have my own wisdom from my own journey and many years of therapy, but I'm not going to pretend that whatever, I've been studying anxiety for years. This is coming to you from practical experience and application. And part of the qualities to me of anxiety are that it is, it's like, it has a very relentless, so I can't get away from it. Whereas if I can move from the anxiety to anger, that anger gives me something to work with, kind of, right? Like, okay, is it trying to protect me from something? Is there a boundary I need to set? Is there, it can kind of get me moving in a productive way. I'm going to let Chrissy in here. Hi, Chrissy. Did you get it? There we go. Hi, Chrissy. You're connecting to audio, so that's cool. Hopefully that will happen momentarily and you will be able to hear me. There we go. Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Great. All right. So far, you're the only one with us live, but that's cool because I had a bunch of people, texting and emailing that they needed the recording. So I just started obviously a little bit ago. So I'm kind of just ready to hit the first of the three tools for how to deal with your anxiety. Okay. So you can.
Sorry, I'm so late.
That's okay. No, I'm just happy you're here. You can watch the recording and watch the first 15 or 20 minutes, of the recording to catch up to where I am.
Okay.
So happy to have you here. I'll go ahead and for now have you mute just so we don't get any background noise. But then I'll open it up for questions if you have any questions or comments, okay? Or you can put them in the chat too, of course, as we go along so you don't forget. So, all right, so that's kind of a background and kind of my take on anxiety, which takes us to my first anxiety buster, which may surprise you, is really allowing. So part of it is, it's that, saying what we resist persists. When we move into that anxiety, and again, I'm gonna sort of define that as this relentless, stress level that's probably ratcheting up. But even if it's just kind of a slow ache, it's that blanket that we can't take off. There's a relentless quality with anxiety. And when we're fighting it, when we just want it to go away, or we're criticizing ourselves, which goodness knows I've done a lot. Any of us, I'm sure, at least those of us who are prone to being very positive, the idea that we have anxiety is really, completely opposite of that. And so I can get into a lot of self-criticism and self-shame if I'm feeling anxious. And I think that happens to a lot of us for a lot of different reasons. And so anytime we're just wanting to butt heads with our anxiety, we will not be very effective in actually getting any relief, getting any of that reduction of the anxiety. And so what I learned to do over these last few years was to be more to allow more of my full spectrum of experience, whether it was I was on the joy spectrum, for part of a day or whatever, or in anxiety, or in some, maybe lower level stress that I wasn't myself labeling as anxiety, whatever it was, to allow it. There's a power in not fighting something. And so even though it's not something you want to, have hang around the rest of your life, to start from a place of, I'm just going to allow this, or maybe accept it would be another word that we could use for that. I'm going to accept that I'm feeling super anxious. I'm out of my mind with anxiety. And instead of telling myself I shouldn't be, or I'm wrong, or what's wrong with me, or, any of the shaming, self-critical things we would do, to just say, okay, I am anxious right now. Sort of like we might do, what's ideal is if it's super neutral, like I'm wearing a brightly colored dress today, like it's just a thing. It is what is, it happens to be sunny at my house. Maybe it's raining at your house, like whatever. It just is, I'm anxious. And when we can start to move into an observer mode, and by observer mode, I really mean, it's almost like we're seeing ourselves like in a movie, like we're watching ourselves. And so in doing that, when we can move into observer, there's just a little bit of space that ends up being created, whatever, in our psyches is the way I think about it. But where now I'm watching myself be anxious. And part of what that does is it makes it not quite so personal. It's sort of like the way we do ideally with our children or our pets, where we say, okay, they did something wrong, they're not bad. Like that's a totally different thing. If I'm saying you're bad because you hit your sister, I'm putting a judgment and a whole thing on you, not just saying it's not good to hit your sister. Okay, so that's kind of what we do when we turn into the observer. It gives us that space so that I don't have to be personally shamed. This is just something that I'm involved in. It's something that is happening in my experience. But if I can if I can allow it, so I'm not fighting against it, I'm not shaming myself for it, and I'm just trying to be a little bit, think of it like curiosity, kind of like, oh, look, I am anxious as all get out. Oh, look, my mind is going a million miles an hour on my financial stresses or my relationship stresses, or is my kid safe, or, any number of things, whatever has triggered the anxiety. Oh, look at that. Because if I can create just that little bit of space where it's not me, because one of the qualities that I'll add to anxiety besides the relentlessness is it feels like it's everything, right? Like when I'm really caught up in anxiety, it feels as if my whole life is just that issue that I'm worried about. And so being able to be the observer allows you to kind of step back and go, oh, look, she's super up. Take the example of my youngest son when he was in his 20s and lived in Africa for 7 years and was in an emotionally abusive relationship. Worse, now that he's out of it, we know it was even worse than we thought. But, he was in a really bad place, really far away, because I live in the US. And so it was very stressful as a mother to have a child that I was pretty sure was really suffering, that was very far away. And he lived in a very small country, Equatorial Guinea. They had the whole country ran on generators. There's no bandwidth. We weren't, he could have emailed me, but he didn't communicate a lot. And we were not hopping on Zoom to have conversations. I mean, it was very difficult to communicate because I didn't really have any way to do it. And so that was very stressful. And so I'd get myself in these fits, and he was estranged from his other siblings. I have 4 kids. So it was very heartbreaking to me that all of my kids who had been so close all of their lives up to that point were now estranged, from him. The other 3 were all fine with each other. But I'm like laying awake in the middle of the night thinking about never having a Christmas together with all of my kids again, or never having Thanksgiving, or, like, what's it going to be like that we're going to be having these separate events because he doesn't want to be with his siblings, and plus I'm worried about him, frankly, hurting himself, killing himself, whatever. I mean, it was a terrible situation. So it feels, it was relentless. A lot of times it would happen to me at night. I think we're all more prone, excuse me, or it's easy for anxiety to get triggered at night when we're tired. And so it was relentless, and it would just feel like it was everything in my life. And so when we can move into that observer and be like, oh, okay, I'm doing it. Here's Brenda. She's over here being super worried about her son. And it just, I don't know what else to say, but it just gives you this little break. Again, it doesn't make it go away, but we're looking at reducing what are little incremental ways we can start to reduce that anxiety. And once I could get that would be enough to kind of stop the spinning, the really fast spinning, enough that then I could say, oh, okay, but now what do I want to do with this? Like, I'm super anxious. What's my next tool, so to speak? Like this could take me to my next thing. So Chrissy, since you're here, do you want to give me any feedback? Does that kind of make sense to you? Do you have any questions around that, or some way you'd like for me to explain that?
No, that makes sense to me. I mean, definitely the nighttime is when all my anxiety comes in, but yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes my strategy is just get the fuck to sleep, and this will be better in the morning, but yeah, okay, great.
I have a hard time sleeping when I'm anxious.
Yeah, me too. I will sometimes I can read myself, I'll pick really lame, the equivalent of a Hallmark Channel book, or something like that. So it really doesn't take any brain power, but it's distracting, which is a great way to take us actually to my anxiety buster number 2. This one came to me, I read this from, I got this from somebody, and I would gladly attribute this to them, except I have no idea where I got it. But this one I remember, this was a day I was out of control about my financial stress I was in. And I did my thing. My routine would be, because this was again like a 3-year period, I had to figure out some way to, try to manage this stuff because it lasted for so long. And so, I'd have my morning rituals to just start the day in a positive place. And I would meditate and I would read stuff, so I had all that. And I wasn't done, and 5 minutes later, my mind is just going about all the and it's not, and this is going to happen, catastrophizing all kinds of future events. And I kind of, like, I knew I was doing it. So I kind of had that observer awareness, but I just couldn't break it. And so somewhere I had seen this and I'm like, ooh, I'm going to try this. So the idea is of super intense, but something that will take so much attention that in the way that whatever, you could be worried about something and then stub your toe, and all of a sudden the pain of stubbing your toe takes your mind completely off of it. Like, that's the concept. We want to do it in a way that doesn't hurt like stubbing our toe does. So it's this idea of just getting so intensely, usually mentally, focused into something, because most of our anxiety is driven by thoughts. I mean, that's, I don't really know what anxiety is. It has feelings that go with it, but what's spurring it and keeping it going are the incessant thoughts about the terrible outcomes or, whatever's going to happen. And so being able to take the mind off of that and get it onto something else, it was incredibly effective. So what I did, and I don't recommend this for everybody, but it worked for me. I decided I needed to get out of the house, for starters. And so I decided I was going to drive, and I was going to be, so now I like to drive. I love my car. I have a convertible, Mustang. It was sunny that day. I happened to be in Pennsylvania when this happened, not in Southern California, but it was a beautiful day. And I was like, I'm going to go drive, and I am going to pay such intense attention to the road, like everything around me and the road. Like, I want to see every rock. I'm going to, see every blip in the double yellow line, like whatever. I was just like, I'm going to go drive, and I'm going to be so focused on what's happening on the road in front of me and in my peripheral vision that I'm going to do it to the point of distraction from everything else going on. Like a driver on a race car track, right? They're not, when you're driving on a race car track, you're a race car driver, you are not thinking about anything except what's happening on the road in that race, the people around you, because any distraction, you're probably going to have an accident because you're going so fast and everything. So that's what I did, and didn't drive that fast. But, and I got to where I think I was just taking myself to the grocery store, or something meaningless, but I got there and it was just like, oh, like I had that relief. It worked. It gave me that relief. And once we have some relief, it can be easier than to stay at the relief or even keep dialing it back down. Because now that I've had some relief, okay, now maybe I can use some of my thought work tools, which I didn't even get into today. Although I have something for you guys at the end that will help with that. Thought work tools, because many of my coach training tools are in mindset type work. And so all the kind of thought work, mindset work you can do that, anybody teaches, I teach, other people teach, is a great way, once you kind of get yourself off the cliff of anxiety, to get to a place where you're much calmer. Like, that's what I would do with my son. So I love Byron Katie's work, and I was taught how to coach her work, which is to ask yourself this series of questions and then do an opposite. So anybody who's followed me, you've heard me do various versions of this. But so once I get myself off the cliff with my son in the middle of the night, then I would start writing, because journaling is so cathartic. You could, that's a Anxiety Buster 2.1 is journaling it out. Like sometimes I could just write it out. I would just write the terrible things I was thinking in my head, and just the cathartic nature of writing would help. Again, it wouldn't take me to zero. I'm super happy and I have no anxiety, but it would bring it down some. And once you start bringing it down some, you start having access to other things of your own or that you've learned or whatever, then you can get to a point where a funny video gets you back into a little grounded place. But you can't start there and you can't go there in one leap. So I would just write my thought work. I'm afraid he's going to kill himself. Okay, so my son's going to kill himself is the anxiety riddled thought. Is it true? Well, I don't know. I don't know. So it can't be, it can't be true. Absolutely yes or no, because I don't know. And so then I could start to talk myself off that ledge, because that opens the door. So that's what all of this is to me, is this series of, can I just keep opening the next door that takes me a little more out of it, because once you're out of the anxiety, trust me, because I've done this now in a number of ways, you can have the reality, maybe is the word I'll say. So I still had a son in Africa in a really difficult point in his life, okay, whether he was suicidal or not. It was bad. So it's not that we're trying to change reality. This goes back to where I was at the beginning of, we can all do hard things. I can handle the hard reality that I have a son that's suffering a long way away from me. That, like, my soul, the love that I have, the power that you have intrinsically, authentically, it can handle that kind of shit. It's not fun, but it can handle it without all that anxiety and what I'm calling stress. That's what going through something really difficult in our authentic power. It's not fun. I don't wish it on somebody else, but it doesn't have all these qualities of stress and anxiety and all that. It's just a hard thing. It's a hard thing you're going through, and it feels completely different. So I could and you can go to sleep with hard things. So I could get myself where I could go back to bed and go to sleep. Yeah, I might need to read a fluffy novel, or probably something about a chef, because I love cooking. And so I love chef memoirs and stuff, foodie books. But I can get there and go to sleep because I've let go in the process of this, allowing, getting an observer, focusing on something else, doing some thought work. It's taken me out of the intense, energetic frenzy of anxiety. So does that make sense? Okay. So you can do anything. I mean, some people would do this. I mean, sometimes I would do it with cooking. I would just I'm going to go cook. I'm going to pay attention to everything that's going on my stove, the ingredients, reading the ingredient, I'm just going to go intentionally put all of my mental energy into a different project. I can imagine this is why people who like to chop wood, right? Because it's just like, boom, boom, it's repetitive. It's, it takes focus, but it doesn't have to be like mentally challenging. When I'm in anxiety, I think my IQ drops precipitously. I wouldn't go try to solve a math problem or something. But it's just this idea of being able to focus on something else. So try that one. And don't pick anything that's going to potentially trigger additional anxiety. Like, stay out of, like, this day I went and drove in my car, I wasn't going to the bank. I was already stressed out about money. I'm not going to go do something that is going to add to it. I went to the grocery store, this Wegmans grocery store, which is a grocery store chain on the East Coast that I love. And, I went there because I knew it would feel good when I got there, so make sure you don't accidentally end up including something in your focus that's going to end up taking you back to the anxiety. All right. And number 3, this is the top 100 list. You could bail at 50, but the point is, and it's kind of like that intense focus, this is a distraction. I am so distracted by something that seems so terrible or so nerve-wracking or so impossible or so hopeless or whatever. Trust me, when you're in serious financial strain for, 2.5 solid years, the idea of having money again, and I've had money plenty of times in my life, so I love having money, and I know that about myself. And there were times just like it just felt so hopeless because it was taking so long, to turn it around. And I would get in a lot of anxiety about that. And so when you have those kinds of thoughts and feelings, and again, they just feel like everything, to go make yourself make a list. I just did it in an Excel spreadsheet because I didn't want to have to count of 100 things I was grateful for, or 100 things that I love about myself and people who love me. Because the other thing about most anxiety is there's at least a component of it that's very self-critical and self-shaming. I should have done this. I shouldn't have done that. So making a list of things you love about yourself and people who love you, that's a really good one. Great things you've experienced. Again, if it just feels like life is a shit show and nothing good is coming at you and nothing good has been coming at you, then make a list of 100 things that are really good that you've experienced in your life. Because when you get to a bigger number like 50 to 100, somewhere up there, it may you by 20 or 30 or so, you've run through all the easy ones. And so it really makes you, okay, now wait a minute. It's like it's giving that mind a different project. Instead of running off on the tangent of all these things to be anxious about, let me give it a different project. And the project is around something good, things I'm grateful for, things I'm good at, good things that have happened to me in my life. Like then it's got me thinking about something not positive for the sake of positivity. This is why I often say affirmations don't work. And I'm not an anti-affirmation person, but when I'm feeling broke, saying I'm wealthy, probably isn't going to help. It just feels too incongruent. It's going to bounce off my mind because my mind is too into all the ways I'm broke. How much money do I have? How many bills do I have? When is more money coming in? I don't know. And it's so running off, collecting evidence to prove that I'm broke and this is hopeless. That's the other thing with our mind. Our mind is absolutely devoted to being right. So as soon as it gets off on something, it's going to just throw all kinds of evidence to prove that it's right. I'm broke and that's never going to change. I'm a failure as an entrepreneur and I'm always going to be a failure, whatever. So when we give it this other project, now wait a minute, what have I been really good at? Or when have I made lots of money? And start making a list of things I've done, times in my life when I've had money, when I was, having success at things, when I'm grateful for things. Then all of a sudden it's like, oh, sort of in the response to, is it true? Is it absolutely true? I'm going to be broke the rest of my life? Well, actually, I don't know that it is. So if I don't know that it is, I start to open possibility for what if it's not? Oh, well, let me remember all the things I'm grateful for, all the things I'm good at, times in my life I've made money. Whatever, with my son, times that my kids were all close. And so maybe we can get back to that again, maybe because there's been a foundation of closeness, we'll be able to get back to that. And we did, in fact, in the last couple of years. So that's been really beautiful. But it was 9 years that my kids that one sibling didn't talk to his other siblings. That's a long time to have your kids estranged from each other as adults. And so, but getting into gratitude, making these lists and making your mind go past the easy answers and keep looking for more and keep looking for more and keep looking for more gives your mind a new project to try to prove it may not always be this way is more true than whatever it's caught up on being anxious about, that it sure is never going to be any way different. Does that sort of, can you see how that would work? Does that resonate? Okay. All right. So One last thing that is sort of overarching, and I've sort of touched on it along the way here, is how important our feelings are in the equation. So even though I just said a lot of anxiety is mindset stuff, along with the thoughts always come the feelings. They're always right next to each other. Sometimes we have our feelings first. We have an experience in our environment. It triggers a sensation that goes up our spinal cord, hits the limbic brain, and the emotional center fires off. And then the rational mind comes in and we have the thought. But a lot of times it's the thought that triggers the emotional mind. Doesn't really matter which comes first, the chicken or the egg, because they're always right up next to each other. We don't have thoughts about how miserable our son might be for very long before we have feelings about it, right? Like they're just right up next to each other. And so when we're in anxiety, it very much feels like our feelings are controlling us. You know, it can get, a lot of times we think of it as, right, we even say it that way, I'm feeling anxious. So that feeling of anxiety, we're not thinking usually the way we express it is not my thoughts are this and that, although that's also what's happening. It feels like our feelings have taken over our whole body and we have nothing but that feeling. And we don't know if it's despair, if it's hopelessness. We can't imagine feeling differently. We can't imagine what would happen that would make that feel different. And so we're caught in that and it feels like it's very much controlling us. By the same token, because our feelings are so powerful, we can use them intentionally the other way. So when I went through this, 2 years, we'll call it, of super significant financial stress, like I didn't even usually know how I would have the money to live next week, let alone a month or having a couple months of reserve in my savings account, so it was forget paycheck to paycheck. It was day to day, week to week, and so but I didn't want to feel that. I didn't want to feel broke. I didn't want to feel the anxiety and the helplessness of when is this ever going to be over? I mean, I asked myself that somewhere, when is this going to be over? I didn't want to feel that. And so what I would do is very intentionally conjure up, create, whatever word you want to call it, the feelings I wanted, feelings of how loved I was. The one thing that actually was super great through this whole time were my relationships. So my relationships with my kids were really strong, my friends, my family, so I didn't have any relationship challenges during this 2 years. And so I would go to all the people that loved me and that I loved. I would go to the feeling of abundance, because abundance is really a feeling state. I mean, sure, we can say the evidence of abundance is how much money is in our bank account, but that feeling, the freedom of feeling abundant, I mean, it's a feeling. And so I figured out how to conjure that up in myself. I would do it most often in nature. I would go get myself, go for a walk, go to the beach, whatever. Because where I was in Southern California, parking was free at the beach I would go to for a reason. That was part of the reason I picked that beach, because parking was free. And so I could, if I had the gas money to get there, I could go to the beach for free. So I would go and I would walk there and I would just look at nature and be, I mean, it's hard to look at nature when you have an intention of finding abundance. I wasn't going with a stubborn resistance to abundance. I'm going with the intention of wanting to stir up the feeling of abundance in my body and in my heart and in my mind. And nature is very abundant by nature. And so it would help me conjure that up. So we want to conjure up that gratitude, that possibility, something else could happen. I would remind myself, it's like reading a book and you never know what's going to happen on the next page. And and I would find people and videos and movies that was the theme of the story, disaster, and then boom, something happens. Well, right before that something happens, nobody knew that something was going to happen. And that would just start to open me up again to feeling possibility, of feeling grateful for what I did have, You know, I was breathing. I still had my car. I still had great relationships. I still had I mean, I never went hungry. So even if it was a lot of peanut butter and jelly, I had that, you know, and conjuring it up is the best way I can describe it, but it's very purposeful. I did that because I wanted to. Because my God, I'm a freaking life coach. I couldn't go start writing blogs or go do a presentation like that. I mean, I was creating and selling programs and coaching people all through this time. I can't show up for a client feeling hopeless and desperate, you know? So I got really good, and it made me, and it wasn't the same as fake it till you make it. I mean, I that can have its place. I did a lot of that earlier on in my journey, but this was really transforming how I felt, how I saw myself, how I felt, you know, in the world, in service to my clients, by conjuring up these feelings that were very incongruent with what the circumstances of my life would have conjured up for me. And I got really good at it, and it's really, really powerful. I think it's why when the pandemic hit, like that was just, I mean, really, it was nothing to me. I mean, of course, it was an inconvenience to not be able to leave home. And, you know, it's not that I didn't believe it was really happening, and I had concern for everybody I love and don't, know for their health and around the world and all that. But like, it just didn't throw me into any kind of anxiety or, any kind of spin, because I think I had just gotten so good at this. I was just like, well, okay. So, let's conjure up some freedom. Let's conjure up some gratitude. Let's conjure up how we want to feel. And that doesn't have to be in line with what our circumstances look like. So how does that sit with you, Chrissy? What is that? Any feedback you want to give me or any questions?
No, I mean, that all sounds good. That's thinking of the good is always,
Yeah.
positive.
I mean, it sounds silly because it sounds so easy, but it really works. I mean, I was putting this shit to the test, so it really does work. And yeah, you have to stay with it. It's not like in a nanosecond I went from despair to abundance. Again, it's a stepping. I mean, I think that's a lot of what I learned in this last one, is to really appreciate the small steps that are just getting me closer. If I can get closer to abundance, that's better. It's going to be easier to get the next step from there. Even if it takes some time, if I can come out of anxiety a little bit and get to where I'm just feeling super pissed off at this or that. I got pissed off at a lot of things during that time. Okay, pissed off is something I can do something with, right? It gives you a little more sense of power. Anxiety is always takes all our power away from us. And so anything we can do to start to step into power, not power over, but authentic power, that anxiety will start to lessen, because anxiety is all about not having any power. So our feelings are really a huge part of this process of living authentically. So what I've done in just our last couple minutes as we wrap up here, all of this, my whole journey of the last couple of years and everything, has brought me to creating this process of self-coaching, and I use it with others. So, other coaching for me, that I have come to call the Solve It method. This is a process I kind of started realizing I was doing a couple years ago, but it took me a while to come up with a name and to really articulate it. So that's what I've been doing over the summer and stuff. And so what I've done is I've created a digital program. In fact, today, this is my first announcement of it. I created a digital program. It's 5 modules, because there are 4 parts of this Solve It method process, and they're not steps. So I've numbered them here, in the modules 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 being ways to apply it, just to make it easier to talk about, but it's not a first, second, third. Any issue you've got, you can come at from any of the 4 places. Like when I was with anxiety, I'd go straight to thoughts. But anyway, let me tell you what they are. So the first one I have for module 1 is desire. We need to get tuned into what our desires are. And that can be trickier than it sounds, because sometimes and I think the pandemic has caused a lot of people to get to a point of, I don't even know what I want anymore. Like, life is so different, and that was such a disruption. I'm not even sure what I want anymore. So you could be there, you could have desires, but you're not taking consistent action towards them, and that's frustrating to you. Like, we can have desires that we think are ours, and then when we really examine it, we realize we outgrew it, or it was somebody else's idea of what we should do, and we just kind of bought into that because we're a people pleaser or whatever. So we unpack the desire component of it. Another component is the action. Action is a lot of times where people get the red flag that something's wrong, something's amiss, because I either think I want something and I'm trying to move towards it and I can't get there, or I'm procrastinating all the time. I tell myself this, but I do that. So action is a great red flag to say, like in my case with my business and stuff, I was doing lots of action. It doesn't mean you're not taking action. I was doing lots of action. It just wasn't effective. And yet I was doing all these best practices things. So I'm like, wait a minute, why is this not working? So then we go to the other two, which are our thoughts there. We're blocking my own thing here, but our thoughts, which as we've just covered in this module, are super central to our experience in life, whether it's anxious or abundant, and our feelings, which again, cannot be separated from our thoughts. So when I use the Solve It method with people, and the way I teach it in this program, so you can start to use it on yourself, is how do I take various problems that I feel like I have, or frustrations, or things that aren't working, and look at it through these lenses, and let these 4 lenses inform, oh, okay, so maybe I don't have a procrastination problem. What I have are a bunch of thoughts that are telling me I'm not good enough to have my desire. And so that's why I don't take the action towards it, that kind of thing. And so there's always a way that at least one of these, and a lot of times it's multiple ones, is part of the act of sabotage, keeping you away from what it is you really want, or figuring out how to quote unquote solve the problem. And then in module 5, that module is just going to be about, stories from my life, from clients' life, so you can really see through the example of somebody else how you start to put this together in your own life. So what I've done, I have the registration page. I'll show you that now. And again, you guys are all the first ones to see it. You'll start seeing it in my social media and stuff over the weekend and next week. But I have all kinds of stuff here, including a gnat, about the program and the kinds of things that will help you with guilt, anxiety, all that kind of stuff. Tapping in, it's really a way to tap into our inner wisdom, because inside of all of us, we know what we need to do. But it can be very hard to get there, and so it's a way to get through that. So anyway, you can read through this as much as you want to find out more about it. Some people I've coached and what they have to say, an FAQ section. But should you decide to invest in this for yourself, so the digital, I'm going to do it in 2 kind of packages. So there's just the digital program by itself. I'm selling that for just $197. And for just you guys who have registered for this masterclass, I'm going to give you the coupon code of masterclass. How clever is that? All lowercase, and you're going to get $25 off if you register by the end of the weekend, because I know the recording won't even go out until tomorrow. So I'm going to give you till the end of the weekend. So if you register, there'll be a coupon code. I'll show you what it looks like in a second. You put masterclass and it'll take off $25. But then I'm also going to offer this mastery level where you can combine the digital program and 3 private coaching sessions with me. And that I discounted even more, because 3 sessions with me is $597, which is how it came out, I guess, to $794. Anyway, that's what it would cost if you just bought the program and then went to my site and signed up for 3 sessions. So if you do it through here, you can add those sessions on, and the total's only going to be $597. And so both of them, there's a payment plan if you want to do that, but just so you can see what this coupon thing looks like. Once you put your credit card information and your shipping and all of that, just come down here to the coupon code master class, all lowercase, tab through that, and boom, there goes the $25. So that'll just give you a little extra discount because this is an introductory price anyway that I won't keep offering forever. I'm not sure how long I'll do it, the next month maybe or something. And then the price will go up on it. But the Solve It method is it's just a great tool to put in your toolbox. And so being able to have those modules, you'll have access to it, you know, forever. And to be able to go back to it, like whatever, if you're spinning in anxiety, to go back and re-listen to that thoughts module, because no matter what, I went back to the same information, the same coaching tools over and over and over. And it just doesn't matter. When you go listen to it again, you hear something you didn't hear before, you know, or there's just something for that particular spell of anxiety you're having, it catches you, you know, and you're like, oh, that, you know, and even though you knew it, you find it. It's like the breadcrumbs, you know. And so I haven't done a digital program for at least a year. And I love having them so that people have that resource when they're freaked out to just go hit it and say, wait a minute, I need something to help talk me out of where I am. And so the same thing with this masterclass, you're going to get this recording. As long as you save the email so you can keep finding the link, you will be able to, you know, access this masterclass anytime you want to as well. And I'm going to keep doing these every third Thursday, different topics, but every third Thursday each month, we'll do a masterclass for free. I'll do the registration so you get the recording. And with that, you can always email me, Brenda@brendaflorida.com. My Instagram is BrendaFloridaCoach. You'll find me on Instagram there. You could DM me or whatever, or in our private Facebook group of Liberate Your People Pleasers. So let me stop sharing for a moment. So any questions or any thoughts or anything you want to share or ask, Chrissy?
No, I think I'm good. I appreciated the masterclass and I think it went really well. And I think those are all good tips.
Awesome. Awesome. That makes me super happy. So that's what I'm here for. I'm super honored to be part of everyone's journey. And I mean, it really just means it's everything to me that you guys invite me in to your journey, because this is my mission and this is my purpose in life. And I'm really grateful for it. So thank you for your time and attention. I'm going to let everybody go, and be sure and just reach out to me if you have any questions about what we've covered today or anything about the Solve It Method program. You're not sure if it's for you, whatever, questions about adding the coaching, just email me and let me know, and we'll hop on a call or whatever and see if it's right for you. All right. Thank you, Chrissy, and everybody else who's watching.
Thank you very much.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
You too.